Hello, good evening everyone and welcome. Thanks you for joining us today webinar session. I am Indra Vijay Singh, lecturer prosthetic and orthotic in PDU NIPPD under Ministry of Social Justice Empowerment. I would like to say thank you Director Madam and HODPO give me opportunity to present the webinar session. I also thanks to my colleagues and seniors. Today I am presenting orthotic management and proper footwear in diabetic foot condition. To be effective orthosis intended for the prevention and treatment of diabetic foot lesion require multidisciplinary consideration of the prescription process. It is not acceptable to use generic prescription approaches when presented with this complex spectrum of management issues. The approach one takes should be based on individual risk and clinical need. Outline of this presentation: Introduction, History of diabetes, Classification of diabetes, Diabetic major complication, Diabetic neuropathy, Neuropathic feet, Common foot deformities, Charcot foot, Management of diabetic foot ulcer, Orthotic management of partial foot amputation, Role of prosthetist and orthotist, Appropriate footwear, COVID-19 and diabetes, and last key message. Introduction: Diabetes is a chronic metabolic disease characterized by elevated levels of blood glucose or blood sugar, which leads over time to serious damage to the heart, blood vessels, eyes, kidneys, and nerves. It is a condition that occurs when the body cannot use glucose normally. Glucose is the main source of energy for the body cells. The levels of glucose in the blood is controlled by hormones called insulin, which is made by pancreas. Diabetes is well understood to be a major and global public health problem that kills 3.8 million people worldwide each year. India currently represents 49% of the world's diabetes burden with an estimated 72 million cases in 2017, a figure expected to almost double to 134 million by 2025. This presents a serious public health challenge to a country facing a future of high population growth and a government attempting to provide free health insurance to half a billion people. The name diabetes was first introduced by Roman physicians, and accounts of the disease were recorded as early as 1500 BC. While references to diabetes mellitus in early medical writing are few, it is not surprising in view of the late in life onset of the disease and the short life expectancy in early times. Clinical interest in the complication of diabetes began in the late 19th century with the increasing age of the population and the development of clinical biochemistry. The majority of diabetic patients are classified into one of two broad classifications: type 1 diabetes due to beta cell destruction, usually leading to absolute deficiency. It is also called juvenile onset. The growth or juvenile onset type is unstable from the beginning, The onset is often abrupt, usually with diabetic coma as the first indication of the disease. This type of diabetes is prone to ketoacidosis. Ketoacidosis means the inability of the body to overcome the disruption in metabolism and is dependent on insulin for control. Type 2 diabetes due to progressive secretory defects on the background of the insulin resistance. It is also called adult onset. This type is by contrast stable and more difficult to diagnose immediately or even to establish a date of onset, which usually occurs after age 40. Coma and ketoacidosis is usually achieved by dietary restriction with or without insulin. The slow onset of the disease must be recognized and treated, and satisfactory control is dependent upon patients' understanding and cooperation. The relative mildness of onset is at times the forewarning to development of other major characteristics complications. Diabetic complications are divided into microvascular and macrovascular. Microvascular due to damage to small blood vessels and macrovascular due to damage of larger blood vessels. Microvascular complications include damage to eye retinopathy leading to blindness, to kidneys nephropathy, and to nerve neuropathy leading to impotence and diabetic foot disorder, which include severe infection leading to amputation. Macrovascular complications include cardiovascular disease such as heart attacks and strokes and insufficiency in blood flow in legs. Since diabetic neuropathy cause nerve damage through different mechanisms a great impact on the foot. Diabetic neuropathy or vascular insufficiency and derangement of metabolism in the peripheral nerves can lead to catastrophic complication of diabetes. These are the complications which especially lend themselves to orthotic and prosthetic management. Diabetic neuropathy is a common name for several disorders of the peripheral nervous system. The conditions involving the lower limbs include polyneuropathy, mononeuropathy, arthropathy, amyotrophy, and hydrosis. Diabetic cold feet. Polyneuropathy, the most common variant of diabetic neuropathy, begins with sensory impairment in a stocking effect beginning at the feet and moving upward, followed by numbness and stiffness of the limb. Motor symptoms: weakness, poor proprioception, and trophic changes including Charcot's joints. Mononeuropathy, the nerve most frequently involved, is the common personnel. In arthropathy, both sensory and autonomic nerves of the joint are involved. A variety of changes occur in the joint, initially painful but later with painless and restrictive lesions. Anhidrosis, a specific syndrome involving the autonomic nerves, causes excessive sweating over the upper body but a total absence of sweating below the waist, resulting in dry, cracking feet with legs. Amyotrophy, with the occurrence of proximal muscles weakness of the lower limb associated with extensor plantar response. Pain, weakness, weight loss, but without objective sensory loss occurrence in the ellipsis and quadriceps groups. Diabetic cold feet, an early manifestation of an alteration of sympathetic control of the blood vessels marked by bluish swelling. The neuropathic foot is characterized by loss of peripheral nerve function, which can be sensory, motor, autonomic, or usually a combination of these. Loss of function causes changes in the form and function of the foot and may lead to ulceration and severe deformity. Biomechanics in the foot may lead to ulceration and progressive deformity, sensory dysfunction, limited joint mobility, deformities in foot, partial foot amputation. Limited joint mobility syndrome is long-term complication. Clinical feature of this condition: progression, painless, stiffness of foot and contracture of a small foot joint. In this situation, initially the forces will be transmitted unaltered to the hindfoot during heel style. Heel eversion will result in inversion of forefoot against the rear foot. In this condition, more pressure applied on medial forefoot in order to invert the forefoot on the rear foot. Limited joint mobility leads to reduced shock absorption within the foot during gait. Later on, friction between the forefoot and the shoe will occur during push-off because of reduced dorsiflexion in the forefoot. Limited joint mobility requires a softened shoe accommodate with shock absorption through the heel, a toughened outsole, a rocker bottom sole, and an insole that distribute pressure evenly. Common foot deformity due to motor neuropathy can lead to foot deformities such as foot drop, equinus, hammer toes, and prominent plantar metatarsal heads. Skin lesion, nail and toe deformities, hollow claw foot, flat foot, charcot foot, neuroosteoarthropathy. Diabetic peripheral neuropathy is usually associated with a skin nutrition disorder, subsequently resulting in lowering of skin temperature, skin paleness, sweating deficiency, and dry skin. Left untreated, dry and cracked feet will occur with eventual development of foot ulcer. Diabetic peripheral neuropathy is usually accompanied by sensory disturbance and movement disorder in feet. Due to decreased pain sensation, patient may not realize that unlifted shoes can lead to the toenails, hallux, and larger toes being constantly under significant pressure. This causes the sides or corners of the toenails to be forced into the skin at the end or side of the toe, leading to ingrown nail. Hollow clawfoot. Clinically, it is characterized by these cardinal points: an increase in the height of the longitudinal arch, a dropping of the anterior arch with plantar flexion of the front of the foot, a variable amount of dorsal retraction of the toes, the clawfoot deformity proper with hyperextension of the metatarsophalangeal and flexion of the phalangeal joints. It is also called the pes cavus. Is just deformity of the foot that is not of congenital origin. Orthotic management of clubfoot. Shown in picture, shoe with maximum pressure distribution by means of full contact insole, toughened outsole with an early pivot point and shock absorption through the heel. In low shoe, the foot is not fixated well enough and a high shoe is not strictly necessary. An ankle high shoe is recommended for hollow clubfoot. Flexible flat foot with hallux valgus. Paralysis of the extrinsic foot muscles, particularly the tibialis posterior, causes the collapse of the longitudinal plantar arch, resulting in a flat foot with a hallux valgus. The weakened foot musculature is unable to store any transformation energy, so there is a little shock absorbing capacity. The abnormal position of the foot causes a great deal of pressure on its medial side or medial edge. The hallux valgus makes normal push-off impossible, creating enormous friction on the medial side. The orthotic management of flexible foot with hallux valgus is recommended. High shoe that corrects the position of the foot by means of an insole and a strong high medial support. In addition, this condition requires a rocker bar under the shoe and shock absorption via the heel. Rigid flat foot with a hallux valgus. Flat foot is a condition in which the longitudinal arch of the foot is lost. It also involves abduction of the forefoot and valgus deformity of the hindfoot. In flexible flat foot, the arch is present during non-weight bearing but is lost during weight bearing. In rigid flat foot, the arch is absent in weight bearing and not weight bearing position. Orthotic management of rigid flat foot with hallux valgus. Surgical shoe with strong medial support. An ankle-high shoe is permissible because no attempt at correction is being made. A rocker bar with an easily pivot point and toughened outsole with shock absorption via the heel is required. Neuroosteoarthropathy, usually known as Charcot foot, refers to progressive degeneration of the weight-bearing joints, a process marked by bone destruction, bone resorption, and eventual deformity. The pathological process is left unnoticed and untreated. It can develop into joint deformity, ulcer, infections, loss of function, and in the worst case scenario, amputation or even death. It was first recognized in patients with syphilis during 19th century by Jean-Martin Charcot. Charcot foot is one of the most challenging foot complications in diabetes. The changes in the forces in the foot combined with osteoporosis can damage the skeleton of the foot and its associated ligament. Foot with deformity as well as the function mentioned already in the presentation, limited joint motion, hollow claw foot and flat foot, insufficient shock absorbing capacity, abnormal distribution of pressure, and limited push-off. Treatment of Charcot foot is by support, unbed wearing, and protection from stress and further injury. Orthotic protection of distal joints of the foot requires the shoe modification rigid sole, and or rocker bar. A plaster joint insole may also be used. Orthotic management for protection of ankle joint and proximal joint of the foot requires an AFO with a patella tendon bearing area. Foot ulcers are a common complication of properly controlled diabetes, forming as a result of skin tissue breaking down and exposing the layers underneath. Charcot foot is one of the deformities that result from trauma to insensitive foot, due to which the arch of the foot collapses. Diabetic neuropathy is decreased protective sensation of the foot, poor hemodynamically, trauma, foot and nerve fiber damage. Management of diabetic foot ulcer. Tissue breakdown is caused by unappreciated trauma. Diabetic foot problems are becoming more common. Prevention is the best option. Excessive pressure or intolerable shear forces traumatize insensitive skin and cause tissue breakdown. Inflammation and edema prevent the body's own vascular healing process from taking place. The most effective preventive measures for the major amputation is screening and referral to a foot care clinic for high risk clients. Treatment strategy. The primary goal of ulcer treatment is quick and infection free wound closure. When arteriosclerosis or other contraindications such as undrained abscesses can be ruled out or can be drained by surgery or treated with antibiotics. Cast treatment can be started. Offloading the wound is described by many authors as the single most important aspect of healing. Partial foot amputation is a common sequel to diabetes and vascular disease. Partial foot amputation is associated with a significant failure rate and numerous complications, including ulceration and secondary amputation. Amputation of the hallux in neuropathic foot always has a dramatic effect on gait. The pressure distribution is altered and push-off takes place over the distal part of the first metatarsal bone, causing much friction there. After push-off, the shoe cannot return to the neutral position, causing wrinkling of the leather of the uppers. This can cause pressure ulcers on the dorsum of the foot. This condition can be corrected by fitting the shoe with a rocker bar with an early pivot point. Wrinkling of the uppers can be eliminated by the use of a stiff outsole. Experience shows that the patient's foot slip easily in this type of shoe. Therefore, ankle high shoes are recommended to relieve the pressure on the distal edge of the foot and insole with maximum pressure distribution is recommended. Forefoot amputation include toe amputation and transmetatarsal amputation, as well as the resection of individual or several metatarsal bones, with the toes being spared. Foot amputation are also carried out in the metatarsal and calcaneal region. It is a high risk of foot going into equinovarus position with peak pressure on the distal edge of the foot. Stiffness is inadequate shock absorption. High show that relieves the pressure on the distal edge of the foot. Rocker bottom sole with an early pivot point. Maximal fixation of the foot in the shoe. The orthotist plays an important role in the care of diabetic patients, especially in the treatment of the major complication presented by the insufficient vascularity and neural function associated with diabetic neuropathy. The orthotist has a primary role to play: design, fit, and follow up the orthosis, quantifying progress, educate patient about wound protection, use orthosis for all weight-bearing activities, no breaks from the orthosis. Orthotic management. In 2005, CAD concluded that neuropathic diabetic foot ulcers are a major public health and economic burden for which there exists an incredibly wide range of orthotic treatments with variable efficacy. Orthotic management of in the intact foot, mechanical control to protect the foot and keep it intact and protect from ulceration will depend on the deformities present: hallux rigidus, hammer, clotose, hallux valgus. Normally will needed in soles footwear to reduce pressure if they are high risk. What orthotic treatments are currently being used? Total contact cast, cast walkers, it is also called air cast, half shoes, therapeutic shoes with custom foot orthosis, shoes with traditional dressing changes, crow, charcot resistant orthopedic walkers. Total contact casting, normally plaster cast. It is the gold standard in offloading. PCC healed a higher proportion of neuropathic plantar foot ulcer than a removable walker with a shear reducing foot bed. It is also weight of the foot, reducing pressure on the wound, protect healing tissue. Many experts recommend offloading with fiberglass total contact casting, removable cast walkers and removable cast walkers as a way to treat these ulcers. The cast walkers are commonly used for wound healing and good rate of healing. Half shoes, also called wedge shoes. Half shoes are easy to obtain and fit. They are used widely with modest success, often the first step in offloading strategy. Custom foot orthosis often used as offloading device for ulcers. Healing rates are poor. Charcot resistant orthopedic walker (CRO) consists of a fully enclosed ankle-foot orthotic with a rocker bottom sole. This device is custom molded and is fabricated from the measurements and mold taken in P&O lab. The CRO consists of a fully enclosed ankle-foot orthotic with a rocker bottom sole, minimize further deformity and prevent ulcer development. Appropriate footwear. Inappropriate footwear is a major cause of ulceration for diabetic patients as well as normal person. Appropriate footwear should be used both indoors and outdoors and should be adapted to the altered biomechanics and deformities essential for prevention. Patients without loss of protective sensation can select off-the-shelf footwear by themselves. In patients with neuropathy and/or ischemia, extra care must be taken when fitting footwear, particularly when foot deformities are also present. The shoe should not be too tight or too loose. Shoes should fasten with adjustable lace, strap or velcro high on the foot to hold foot firmly held inside the shoe. The heel should be under 5 cm high to reduce pressure on metatarsal heads. Inner lining of shoe should be smooth. The inside of the shoe should be 1-2 cm longer than the foot itself. The internal width should be equal to the width of the foot at the site of the metatarsal phalangeal joints, and the height should be allow enough room for the toes. Appropriate footwear. The fit must be evaluated with the patient in standing position, preferably at the end of the day. If the fit is too tight because of deformities or if there are signs of abnormal loading of the foot. Hyperemia, callus ulceration, patients should be referred for the special footwear advice and construction, including insoles and orthoses. In pandemic COVID-19, lack of treatment availability, no proper transport, no clinic hospitals are open in full manner. If patients have serious condition, nerve damage, circulation problem and infection can lead to serious foot problem. Patients can take precaution, health and healthy feet. In, in a condition like diabetes, even minor health risk can prove costly since blood sugar level can be vital during this phase and impact immunity. Make sure you drink plenty of water and prevent dehydration. It is also important that you take care and avoid minor cuts and bleeds. Foot hygiene along with hand hygiene should not be ignored at this vulnerable time. Meticulous skin care can ensure that cuts and bleeds do not turn into major infection which impacts blood flow. Lastly, do not treat this as a time to ignore lifestyle modification. Sleep well, exercise well, even if at home, and eat right, all of which can help keep your immunity healthy. Diabetic foot care. Daily foot hygiene is a mandatory and must be encouraged. Mild soap and warm water are used. Complete drying of the skin, especially between toes and square toenails. Trimming are very important as well as close inspection skin for blisters and pressure areas. Feel bumps or temperature changes. Examine bottom of feet and track what you find. An overview of diabetes and the orthotic and prosthetic consideration have presented. We would re-emphasize that diabetes is an enormously complicated disease and carelessness or mistreatment can have catastrophic end results. Treatment of diabetic foot complication imposes substantially and widespread mobility and healthcare cost. The foot ulceration is a common complication is in the post-acute stage that orthotic and prosthetic management is necessary. Prosthetists and orthotists are the only allied health professional qualified to provide the full range of lower limb orthosis and prosthesis. Early access to prosthetists and orthotists in both the primary and secondary healthcare setting. Thank you for joining us and listening carefully. Again, thank you very much.